Okay, very good. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. This is Western Liberty Network's weekly training. We do this every Saturday at 1 o'clock on a different topic. Typically, we have a guest trainer. Today, we don't. I'll be providing the training personally. And so because I'm doing that, I'll be managing the chat window and the participant window and providing the training. So I may have to take a slight break from time to time to deal with that. So I hope you'll be patient with me there. The topic of this meeting or this training is dealing with the media, do's and don'ts, which we'll begin with shortly after a couple of announcements I'm going to make here. First of all, Dennis Linthicum is going to do the training next week, state senator. He's going to talk about the kind of government that we should expect, keeping our eye on the ball and making sure that we don't get settled into a method or I guess a normal that we shouldn't accept, what we should expect from our government and our government leaders. On the 23rd, Tom Cox, who is a systems expert and also a former candidate for state representative, Metro, and a Libertarian nominee for governor back in 2002, will be talking about organizing around local issues. On the 30th, we'll be live streaming the Western Liberty Network annual conference beginning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. That will be at the Embassy Suites Hotel in Tigard, Oregon. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a little bit. And then starting with February 6th, we're going to do a regulatory action training from the National Freedom Works office as our guest trainer. That's very exciting. And then on the 16th of February, Tim Knope, state senator, is going to provide training. We're working on the topic there. And so we have a lot of good stuff coming up. At this point, I'd like to welcome Darlene. Darlene is with us and Carol's Z iPad is with us. So I want to thank all of you for joining us here in the meeting. The next item I'm going to talk about is the Western Liberty Network Conference promo. I'm going to share my screen right now. This is the website of Western Liberty Network that you can see. And we have about 12 tickets left to sell. We're limited to 50 this year because of COVID, but we have about 12 tickets left to sell. And as you can tell, we have a good lineup. The whole conference is $75, includes a hot pizza and salad lunch. And Steve Moore, Tom Cox are going to present remotely.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a little bit of feedback. I'm going to deal with that here in a second. I'd like to ask everyone to mute their microphones so we avoid the feedback. I'm going to take a minute here and figure out how to stop sharing the screen real quick. The website is www.westernlibertynetwork.org. You can register now if you need lodging. We have a group rate of $149 from Embassy Suites. That includes all taxes and fees, and it also includes a made-to-order breakfast the following morning. Live at the conference will be State Senator Kim Thatcher, State Representative Mike Neerman, Clackamas County Chair Tootie Smith, Lilia Zukov, who's a board member of Slavic Vote, State Senator Dennis Linthicum, and Greg Burnett, who's going to talk to us about social media. He is a board member of Western Liberty Network and also owner of the Burnett Media Group, which is a social media company. So if you can be patient with me for a second here, I will, oh, Mike Neerman has just entered the waiting room. So he's going to join us. And I'm going to try and figure out how to stop sharing the screen. I'm still learning Zoom.
You should just have a stop share.
I'm looking for that.
I'm trying to remember on the laptop.
There it is. I got it. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
We're back. Okay, very good. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Richard.
Thank you for joining us today.
Sure, yeah, glad to.
Now I have to give a little bit of etiquette. I'd like to ask everyone to mute themselves, unmute themselves if you unmute yourself if you want to talk, and then remute yourself when you're done talking. This will help us to avoid some feedback issues like we had a little earlier in this call. And then finally, I'd like to offer a disclaimer. Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 organization. We, by law, do not and cannot oppose or support any candidate for partisan office, any political party, and we also do not support or oppose any legislation or ballot measures. What we do is train people how to run for local office, how to serve in local office, how to be good campaign volunteers, and how to be strong citizen advocates. And anything that is said on this message by any participant is not meant to indicate that Western Liberty Network violates that policy in any way. So with that, we'll get started. Dealing with the media is important. I know that a couple of people on this call are planning to run for local nonpartisan office this spring. Others are activists. And in the case of Mike Neerman, he deals with the media all the time. And so this might be review to him. And if you or Mike or anyone else wants to interject at any point and augment what I'm offering in this training here, please do not be shy. Dive in at any time. If anybody has a question, dive in at any time. And what I like to begin with when I do this training is to point out a reality of local news reporting. We all know that almost all of the media tilts pretty heavily toward the left. And the higher you go in the media feeding chain, you know, television, statewide coverage, national coverage, the more biased that there actually is. But when you're dealing with the local papers for local offices, like the Beaverton Valley Times or things like that. Hello, Michelle. Michelle Binker has just joined us. When you're dealing with local community papers, mostly what reporters want is to go home and not get fired. I had a very close relationship with someone who used to be a reporter, and that's really what motivates most of them. Yes, they do tend to run to the left, but what they really want is to not get fired and to go home. They work very hard. Most reporters for local papers and media outlets like that are grossly underpaid. They're overworked. They have 4 or 5 stories. They've got an editor that's on their case, and they've got to deal with deadlines. And so one of the most important things you can do is to be a valuable resource to them. Help them to go home. Help them to complete their job and meet their deadlines. And then help them to not get fired, which involves finishing their stories and getting their deadlines. They may be liberal, they may skew to the left, but if you're able to help them to do these things, you are gold to them, and they will be turning to you on a regular basis when they need a conservative or a constitutionalist or a libertarian perspective on anything. They'll come to you first. What I also tell people is know who to talk to. If you're going to deal with the media, or you think you may be dealing with the media, it's good to be proactive. Find out the media platforms that you're likely to deal with, your local paper, prominent bloggers in your area, local radio stations, local TV stations if you have one, and do some research. Find out who is in charge of the news departments. Find out who the assignment editors are, and then find out who the reporters are and what their beats are. If you have this information, a lot of times you can be very proactive in getting your story covered, getting your perspective covered. While you're at that, make sure you get all their email addresses, make sure you get their fax numbers, because from time to time you will want to do press releases. That's another training. And so if you have the assignment editors, the reporters, you've got the press releases, the email and fax numbers for press releases, you're going to be able to be very proactive in promoting a story. And these people, they're dealing with deadlines. If they think your story has legs, you will be an instant resource for them. I've written press releases when I was running for office, and various statewide outlets. They would literally, like the Wallowa County chieftain, they would literally just print my press release. Make their job easy. In other words, that's another way of saying help them go home and help them not get fired. Another thing is make sure everything you send the media outlets is typed and looks professional. I have actually seen people submit handwritten press releases to the media and send them over fax. Of course, just about everything that people do is typed these days or generated on a computer, but there are a lot of templates out there for press releases that are free that you can download off the internet. Use the template to create a press release and then type it up, fax it out, email it out, do whatever is necessary, but make sure that everything you send the media is professional and typed. Get a good photograph. I'm looking here at Michelle's photograph. That's a good photograph, Michelle. I like that. Yep, Mike Neerman gives his approval. Make sure you get a professional photograph taken of yourself by a professional photographer. A good headshot. You should have a couple of different headshots. One with the background you like, that presents you in your best light. Another one that makes sure that has no symbols in it. No flag, no lapel pins, nothing like that, because if you put a statement in the voter's pamphlet, you're not allowed to have any symbols or any logos, and they will charge you money if they need to use software to remove those items. So go to the Secretary of State's website and find out what the current requirements are for voter pamphlet photographs, and make sure you get a photograph taken that complies with that. It's good if you have black and white and color, if that you have high definition digital versions of both. And when you send out press releases, you should also send out with that a digital copy of your photograph. That vastly increases the chances you're going to get your picture included with whatever story they write that includes information from your press release. You don't want to have to rely on a file photo that they may have or anything like that. To the extent you can define yourself, and that includes your image. So make sure you have good professional photographs. A lot of people like to have a formal photograph in front of a flag or something, and they like to have one that complies with the voter pamphlet statement. They also tend to like to have one that is informal, that shows them riding a bike or with their family or with their dog. Always got to have a dog, right? If you don't have a golden retriever or a German shepherd, you hate dogs, right? And these are photos that can all be used on campaign literature and also can be provided to the media. So think about what we've talked about. We've talked about nothing to do with content. We've talked about understanding that most reporters just want to go home and don't want to get fired, and that you're a resource to them if you are able to provide them information and make their job easy to do. We've talked about knowing who to talk to, finding out who the assignment editors are for your various media outlets, find out who the news directors are, find out who the reporters are, what their respective beats are, so that you don't waste their time or your time and contact the right people. Talked about presenting any written materials you have in a professional typewritten way and having good photographs of yourself. Already, whatever you send in your news release, you've done a lot to make sure that you maximize the chances of you actually getting something published. You actually maximize the chances of being seen as a reporter, as a reliable source that they can come to on future issues. And you've also done a lot to promote whatever you want to promote. The next item is have a social media presence. A lot of people who run for local nonpartisan office don't use their social media presence, or they don't even have one in some cases. I mean, I am ticked off at Facebook. I'm ticked off at Twitter. I don't like a lot of those platforms, but they're still valuable, and a lot of people still use them and they still look to them. If you are running for a local nonpartisan office, or you're trying to get the word out about a ballot measure campaign or some other cause that you're dealing with, you've got to have a good social media presence. Have a Twitter account, have a Facebook account, have a Parler account, have an account with WeMe, do whatever you can. These are platforms which cost you no money. They cost you a little bit of time, and if time is at a premium for you, get somebody to help you with this. If you're running for local office, get a social media director who will be responsible for this. Put out announcements, do what you need to do. It's hard to reach people and it's hard to punch through the noise when you're running for a local nonpartisan office. It is good if you can reach people directly, and you can do that with a social media presence. Having email lists is good. Asking people that control email lists or social media presences to echo what you put out is also very helpful. The next item that I tell people is to simply be accessible. If a reporter calls you, answer the phone. Do not send them to email unless you have a dire thing going on. If they do land an email, call them back immediately. Again, these reporters are usually in a panic to meet deadlines. You're probably one of about 4 stories that they have to cover. And when they're under that kind of pressure, who are they going to go to first for the information? They're going to go to the person that's accessible. Be accessible. Do not cause people to say, well, I don't really need a comment from them anyway. I can finish the story without it. Or I'm going to call somebody instead because they're more accessible than this person is. Be the one that is accessible. The next thing I like to tell people is do not alienate reporters. Reporters are they make a lot of mistakes. Almost all of the time, particularly at the local level, the mistakes are not on purpose. We deal with a lot of issues so intensely that we often see them as secondhand. Of course I know this. Of course you know that. Reporters don't. Reporters deal with lots of issues, and what may seem obvious and clear to you does not often seem obvious and clear to them. You have to give them the facts very clearly and very simply. If they get it wrong, it's usually because the person being reported upon made a mistake in clarity, or they made a presumption that the reporter knew something that they really didn't know. But when they alienate reporters, they basically shut themselves off as a source. I've seen a lot of people who would call a newspaper and they would contact the reporter and they would yell at them for a mistake they made in the story. That's always a mistake. If you start yelling at an alienated reporter, first, they're going to hate you. If your name comes up in a conversation among reporters, they're going to tell them that they hate you. Sometimes people call their bosses, their editors, or their assignment editors and said, so-and-so made such a mistake. That gets them in trouble. Again, reporters mostly want to go home and they mostly don't want to get fired. If the reporters make a mistake that you talk to, call them. That's okay. And say, you know something, I might not have been clear about something and I apologize for that, but I noticed something in your article that was counterfactual and I wanted to give you some updated information. There's nothing wrong with that. Most of the time, reporters will respond well to that. Most of the time, reporters will be grateful for that. But what you will tell these reporters is that, look, I'm not out to get you in trouble. I'm not out to get you fired. I'm not a firebrand. I'm not going to yell at you. I am a reasonable source. And when you make a mistake, it's not going to damage or destroy the relationship. If you are accessible as a news source, and if you provide them good information in a professional way, you present yourself well, and when they make a mistake, you deal with them, respectfully, you're gold to them because you're the kind of person that helps them do their job and helps them go home on time at the end of their shift and doesn't get them in trouble with their editors. There are a lot of things they have to balance. One time I spoke with a reporter whose job it was to cover a pumpkin festival in a community. And on this particular day, it was a flop. Very few people showed up. It was rainy. It was cold. And the reporter delivered a story that truthfully reflected the failure of this pumpkin festival. And the editor went up to her and said, look, I know this is an accurate story, but if I print this, I have to fire you. And she said, why? Well, because we have a lot of important advertisers that sponsored the pumpkin festival. And if that's a failure that reflects badly on them, they're not going to like it. They're going to come down on me and I'm going to have to fire you. So she rewrote it And she wrote it to highlight a couple of pictures of kids with animals and said what a great event it was, and all was fine. These are the kind of pressures that reporters are under. And at the same time, this woman had to do 4 other stories on the same day, and they all had to be done by a certain deadline. So help, I cannot emphasize that enough. I talk about this all the time. You need to remember that about reporters and be someone that helps them do their jobs. And whatever you do, do not alienate them, no matter how egregious of a mistake they make in their coverage of you or coverage in your issues. Now, on rare occasions, there may be reporters who work maliciously and are out to get you. I've seen only 1 or 2 of those kind of incidences during my career. They happen a lot at the national level and sometimes at the state level, but at the local level where you're talking about folks on the water board or the school board or anything like that, it's very, very rare. So if they make a mistake, tend to presume that it is based upon lack of understanding or incompetence or ignorance, but not malicious intent, and give them a respectful correction. Next item that I have is be patient with reporters. If they don't know what you know, as I mentioned before, what's obvious to you is not obvious to them. Give them time to ask questions, answer their questions patiently, as you would someone who is like 16 years old. Don't condescend to them, don't patronize them, but get to the basics of what you're talking about, and do not try to blow past them with things that you think the reporter should have known. Don't presume that. I'd like to also welcome Jean and Greg to the conference. With that number of people, we've now passed the Brady Bunch number of 9. And right now, Darlene, you are Alice. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'll take a break with that. Next item in the training is do not try to dance with the facts. A lot of times reporters might ask you a question that you simply don't know the answer to. And most of the time, people who are inexperienced will try to BS something, conjure something up, or dance with the facts, or distract and deflect. Don't do that. Over the long haul, if you're dealing at the local, nonpartisan level, if you are asked a question you don't know the answer to, you will do well to simply say, you know something? I haven't thought of that. I haven't thought of that completely through. Let me get back to you, and I'll have something to say, within such and such a time. And then get back to them. Now, at the national and state level, you may be asked a question that you don't know the answer to, and it makes you look really bad, and it can be politically destructive. I remember when Libertarian candidate for president, Gary Johnson, botched the question of what he thought about Aleppo. And, of course, he knew what Aleppo was, but he thought it was referring to something else. And it came off like he didn't know what the heck he was talking about. So once he realized he'd screwed up, he tried to dance around it, and it just made him look horrible. And it did a lot to marginalize him, even as a constructive voice during that particular campaign. But at the local level, where most positions are volunteer positions, people do not expect you to be an expert in everything. And so if you get caught by a reporter with a question that you don't know the answer to, don't let it shake you. Don't let it cause you to hit the panic button. Just be honest. Just say, I'm not sure about that, but I want to find out. And I'll tell you what, give me a couple of hours. I'll make a couple phone calls. I'll find out, and I'll get back to you. And then get back to them. That's fine. Even if it does hurt you a little bit, it will help you build a reputation as someone who is not a liar, who is not a BSer, somebody who is sincere, and somebody who is thoughtful. And in the short run, that might hurt you, but in the long run, it's going to help you. And people are going to notice that over time, and it's going to help your reputation, not only as a candidate or as an activist, but if you do get into office, that reputation will follow you there, and you'll be more effective, especially with people that are not on your side. because they will see that you do not bluster through at any cost. They will see that you are thoughtful and or at least honest, and that when you say something, they can believe that you really believe it's true. And in politics, people who have that attribute are becoming more rare and more rare at a time when trust is disappearing, suspicion is increasing, and we have all of the problems with divisiveness that we see throughout our country. Finally, don't make assumptions about the political persuasions of departments or individual reporters. Yes, most of them are left, but not all of them. And you'll never know when you'll find somebody who is actually kind of predisposed your way ideologically. I've run into that a couple of times, and I've been very surprised. Now, as you get to know different reporters, bloggers, media outlet people, you will know what they come to believe, and that can help you, find some places where you agree. You can start discussions at, to form a bond. But when you don't know somebody, do not make presumptions about what they think. Do not say, oh gosh, it's just another liberal reporter, because there are conservative reporters out there. There are reporters who are on our side of the ideological fence, and give them a chance to build a relationship with you on that. Sometimes that can happen. I'm sure that when you approach somebody for the first time, you don't want them to make presumptions about you. You want them to sort of give you a chance to present yourself and do what you want to do. I'm going to send my PDF to all of you. This is the companion document that goes with this training. And there it is. I just sent it all to you. This is a PDF. You can print, download, distribute, send as much as you'd like. This doesn't have all the answers. It has some of them. You may have more. And at this point, I'd like to see if anyone has any questions, or if anyone would like to contribute to this.
Or did you put it in the chat, or did you send it email?
I put it in the chat.
Yeah, I don't see it in there. Did you press send?
I did. It might take longer to get to you because it's on the phone.
All right.
But anyway, any of our training documents are also available on the westernlibertynetwork.org website. All you have to do is go to westernlibertynetwork.org and then hit the training tab and scroll down until you see the companion document. This one is do's and don'ts for dealing with the media. Dealing with the media, do's and don'ts. But you can always download any of our PDFs there. Soon we will have links to recordings of all of these weekly sessions. And for those of you who are on desktop computers, you should have received this document through chat. And so does anyone else want to say anything or ask a question? Mike, go for it.
Thanks, Richard. That was really great. When you were talking, and everything you said was golden. And but I didn't appreciate everything you said because a lot of it was highlighting mistakes that I've made in my career, and so it's a little bit painful sometimes to have to hear that. But I just want to add to one thing, and I think this builds on what you were saying there, is that that the media is a relationship. You have to develop relationships with them. And so, for instance, when you send out a press release to the local weekly in your area or something like that, then you maybe call the guy and say, hey, Bob, this is Mike Neerman, and I just sent you a press release. I just want to make sure you got it. And if you have any questions, how you can contact me. Make that little personal thing there. Then when they print the story, and I had a reporter once do a story, and he referred to me in the story about 5 times. And each time he referred to me as far right wing Mike Neerman. Now, I wrote that guy off or whatever, but what I should have done was I should have called him up and said, hey, Bob, I just didn't think that was very charitable to continually refer to me as far right wing Mike Neerman. Is there anybody that you refer to as far left wing? And just gently prod him like that. But things like that where you have a thing, or if they didn't pick up my press release, which is fine, sometimes my press releases don't get picked up, then the next time they're calling me and asking me for a statement, and say, hey, Neerman, would you care to comment on this? And say, yeah, I would. And, Bob, I'm really disappointed that I sent you a press release that I thought had some really good information that people wanted to know about a month ago, and you never printed that or whatever. That kind of, I don't want to call it shaming or whatever, but that kind of accountability kind of thing. It's a two-way street. You need the media to get your message out, and they need you to have some content so they can sell clicks. So if you're just conscious of that, that's kind of helpful. And like anything else is, and I'm be a little bit less charitable than Richard. Was Richard said most of them are liberals. I'll say every last one of them is a liberal or whatever. Every last one of them is an activist, and that's for sure, because nobody who knows how to put a paragraph together signs up for a job that pays $16.50 an hour unless they have some other motive for being in that job. So they're either trying to get a date with the receptionist or they're an activist.
Well, that's true. I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I remember when I was running for governor of Oregon on the Libertarian ticket, and this is way back in 1998. I'm going around the state on an earned media tour, and I was at the Dallas, Dallas Chronicle, the Dallas Chronicle, I believe it was, and I ran into a reporter there. It turned out he was a libertarian too. And I was shocked because I hadn't met very many of them. But Mike's point, it's well taken. The vast majority of them are liberals. I think some of them think they're, they take a 16-hour job. They come out of journalism school, or they come out very, idealistic. They think they're going to be the next Woodburn and Bernstein. And yes, I might be making $16 an hour, but I'm going to make it big. It's kind of like the rock band person. I'm going to make it, man. I'm going to LA. I'm going to make it. But that usually doesn't happen. That's right. The Dallas Dallas Observer. Thank you, Donna. And very good.
If I could jump in a little bit here. So I wrote when the campaigns were going, and I was working on Kelly Sloop's campaign. I was asked to write a little piece for Pamplin Media, and what I learned there was you submit it online, and you're for certain things you're only limited to a certain amount of characters or words or whatever. They limit that. But then I also found out if you are claiming something and they don't immediately have the backup, they do like to have the backup. And so I was emailed back and they said, hey, I understand you're claiming this. Can you either revise it or give me the backup? So that he had it. And so I provided the back. I did a little bit of revising, but I provided the backup as well. And so it was printed in the next publication.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
I had a question. This is Darlene.
Yes.
We had our Republican Party executive board meeting last night, and it was brought up in the meeting that our office there in Pleasant Hill is getting several, I guess, nasty phone calls, as well as I think some media people wanting comment about what went on in Washington, D.C. And I just wondered if you had any comments on how we might address these people.
Okay. Michelle and Mike, feel free to, or anyone else, feel free to chime in on this too. But I would put out a press release and have a statement at hand, and maybe something on the website pointing out that while you're a supporter of the policies of President Trump and the Trump administration generally, you condemn the violence. This is a very small minority of people that have ruined it for other people, and not all of them are necessarily affiliated with the Trump movement, but that you condemn the violence completely. I would just make that very, very clear. If you get threatened, if you get rocks through the window. We used to get rocks through the window at our headquarters because we were fighting some public employee union stuff. Put out a press release about it. Let people know that you are being harassed, that you are being threatened, and just say, boy, I don't understand this. We live in a free country. We're supposed to have the right to express ourselves and to be politically active as long as we obey the law. Violence isn't a part of that. Violence is what happens in third world countries. And if any of this gets published, sometimes it can generate sympathy for you and your cause. There are people out there who are decent people, who are good people, who are not necessarily hardcore liberals or conservatives, but they can be tilted by who they think the jerk is. And if you run into these problems and you can get people to print a story that shows that the other side is a jerk, you know, it can actually help you. And in the process, over time, be a disincentive for such activities in the future. But, you know, these are continual, eternal battles and problems. And like blackberries, you can't usually eliminate them, but you can whack them back a ways. And in politics, that's just sort of what we take on. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Nope, I guess I'm wiser than I thought, you know, or dumber than I thought. I don't know. We'll see what people think about that. This is my training on do's and don'ts with media. If you follow these do's and don'ts, you will generally do much better with the media than if you didn't. And over the course of my career, you know, I don't claim to have any native, you know, genius with respect to this topic, but I have been around the track a few times and learned things through trial and error. And so these are the most important points that I've brought up, along with the augmentation provided by State Representative Neerman. So is there anything else today? Okay, if not, I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to type this out real quick. Okay, I'm going to ask all of you who have not already done so to check out westernlibertynetwork.org and look at the lineup that we have for our 11th annual conference to be held on Saturday, January 30th, beginning at 9 a.m. at the Embassy Suites Hotel in Tigard. Attendance is limited to 50 because of COVID. I am fighting that. We'll see how that goes. But we are also going to live stream it if we sell our tickets. And I think we will sell, we have about 12 left. Again, the event is $75. It includes a hot pizza lunch. And if you need lodging, we've got group rate lodging at $149, which includes all taxes and fees, and also includes a hot made-to-order breakfast the following morning. It's actually a very, very good venue, and the training is great. For content, we've got Steve Moore, State Representative Kim Thatcher, our good friend here, Mike Neerman, Senator Dennis Linthicum, and a whole bunch of them. You can see the whole lineup on the westernlibertynetwork.org website. You can download the full agenda to see what's involved. And it's going to be a lot of great material to kick off 2021. If you have any questions, you can contact me off the website, or you can call me as you wish. And unless there's anything else, we're going to call it, yeah, Senator Kim Thatcher. That's right. Thank you, Michelle. And so if there is nothing else, we're going to call it a day. Okay. Thank you very much. Take care and have a great week. Hope to see you next week.